I continue with the topic of Q&As about different topics, topic about topic. This part will be about a permanent residence permit again. And the question we get a lot is how to get a permanent residency. So I'll answer it today in this video. After that, I will again go to the joiners only area and I will be doing a live Q&As there. So in this live stream, you can ask me whatever you want about permanent residency. I'll be happy to answer that. If you have some other questions, please join, become a joiner. $8 a month, 8 live streams with me directly. Now there are not too many joiners, I think one just. So you can basically get a consultation with me one-on-one for $8 a month. So join if you have any questions I will not be answering here today. Hey, Pratik. So let's get into the topic. Obviously, getting a PR, there are different types of PR. So there is one for standard third country nationals, standard non-EU citizens. Then there is different type for EU citizens. Then there is a different type for family members of EU citizens. And those also have kind of subtypes because, for example, it's usually a bit different or very different for kids and adults. So there are also like subtypes. And for EU family members, it depends if it's close or like distant family members. So there are different variations, but there are 3 steps you need to go through in every permanent residence permit application. Pratik, can you answer my question I asked that day? Yes, when I go to the joiners area after I finish this live stream, I will answer it there. I already have it printed, so I don't forget anything. So feel free to join, and we can chat like this, or I will just record it there, and it will be in the members only area after this live stream anyway. So 3 steps to obtain Czech permanent residence permit. Step 1. Make sure that you qualify for the permanent residence permit. That's the first thing. Because there are, as I mentioned, there are various different types of permanent residence permit in the Czech Republic. So you first need to make sure that you qualify. I will walk you through the different versions, but not all of them, just the basic ones. So generally, if you are a non-EU citizen, not related to an EU citizen, you generally need to be in the Czech Republic for at least 5 years to be able to apply for the permanent residency. This can be delayed if some of the 5 years were student years, because student years only count as half. So if you studied for 3 years, for example, your bachelor's, then it only counts as 1.5 years for the permanent residency. So this is one of the main requirements. You need to make sure that you've been living here long enough. For example, for close family members of EU citizens, it can be 2 years instead of 5 years, but there are some other conditions as well. Like, for example, it must be a Czech citizen having their kind of address, let's say, registered in the Czech Republic, or an EU citizen who already holds a permanent residence permit, and it only applies to close family members, meaning married couples and kids, not to distant family members. So there are different rules, and depending on your situation, you might already or might not qualify for the permanent residency. So that's always the first step. Make sure that you qualify. Of course, you can always submit the application and just try, but it's kind of, because the application can be pretty complex, I would not recommend just trying. One thing I can recommend though is that you go to the Ministry of the Interior and you request something called the History of Residence, Historie pobytu, which basically shows you all the different visa types you had, the exact type and the validity of the visa. So you can easily calculate, if you know how to calculate it, the exact stay or exact amount of time you spent in the Czech Republic, which is one of the main requirements. So that was step number 1. Make sure that you actually qualify, because if you don't qualify, makes no sense to apply because you'll be denied. Second step is collecting all the required documents. Obviously, kind of goes with the previous step as well, because some of the documents are pretty straightforward. So let's say application form, yeah, that's for non-EU citizens, that's the same for as you've been maybe filling in already a couple times before. For the long-term and permanent residence permit, in some cases it's a different form, but it's still the same type of a form. Some questions which you need to answer. Nothing too complicated there. Passport, yeah, guess you have a passport and a valid residence permit at the moment. 2 passport size photos, proof of accommodation, then officially proof of living here long enough. That's usually not required, because I also was asked about this, I think in like under some of the videos. If you need to prove to the ministry that you have really been here for long enough. If you're a non-EU citizen, you generally don't have to prove it because the ministry has everything in the system. What they could do though is that if they see that you've been outside of the Czech Republic or outside of Schengen area for extended periods of time, they see your stamps or they see records at the airports or whatever, then they could request confirmation how much time you spent outside, because there are also some rules about that, like how much time you can spend outside of the Czech Republic to still qualify for the permanent residency. So they might ask you about this, but generally you don't need to provide anything on your own unless they request it. Different situation can be for EU citizens, because for example, EU citizens can apply directly for the permanent residency without having any previous registration certificate or temporary residency in the Czech Republic. In that case, though, they have to prove that they really have been living here the whole 5 years, because the same rules still apply, that you have to be living here for 5 years. But as an EU citizen, you don't need any like visa or residence permit to live here. So you can directly apply for the permanent residency if you previously didn't have the temporary one. But in that case, you definitely need to prove that you've been living here the whole time. And that can get pretty tricky without the temporary residency, because you need to prove that you haven't left basically even for 1 day, like in meaning of that you would not have an employment contract, or that you would not have a lease agreement or stuff like that. So that can get pretty tricky. And that's one of, let me mark it down maybe, because that's a good idea actually. OR jednodušší, sorry guys. That's actually one of the benefits, because sometimes EU citizens ask us, what are the benefits of getting the temporary residency if you if you don't need it as an EU citizen. Sometimes people get cocky. That was also under one of my recent videos, that someone was like, EU citizens do not need permanent residence permit to live in the Czech Republic. Like, they don't, but some of them want it because it has some benefits. Anyway, sometimes people are too clever on the internet if they don't speak with you in person. Anyway, so this is actually a great advantage of having the temporary residency, because then you don't really need to prove anything to the ministry for the PR. On the other hand, if you are getting the PR directly, you have to provide a lot of documents, and the ministry still might not believe that. We've had cases like that where people like had to print like all the times they went to the gym, like to show that they were really physically in the Czech Republic without the temporary residency. So that's proven of living here long enough. Then for non-EU applications and family members, distant family members, like unmarried couples of EU citizens, you also need to prove that you have high enough income. And that could potentially be also in the step number 1, that you make sure that you qualify, because if your income is low, either really low or on paper low, because you do taxes, you're a freelancer and you do the 60-40 method, which is great for not paying any taxes. On the other hand, it also usually means that you don't qualify for any residence permits, because on paper your income is way too low. Similarly, sometimes people get just, even if they're employed, they get just the minimum salary and then they get cash under the table or unofficially. And that's great for you as well. in a way, but then you also don't qualify for the PR on paper. So that might be step number one, but it's also part of the documentation for most applications. So it's in the step number 2 as well. Then for non-EU citizens, you have to have a Czech language certificate. Honestly, it's pretty simple. It's A2, and you should really speak A2 after 5 years of living in the Czech Republic, my humble opinion. If you don't, something is wrong. Probably you are staying in your expat bubble and you're not even trying. Maybe it's too harsh from me, but if you live for 5 years in some country, I think you should be able to pass A2 level exam, because that's like, hello, how are you? What's the time when the next train is coming? Nothing too really deep and philosophical. Anyway, you have to pass the exam, and one of the biggest troubles to get the exam is to actually get an appointment for the exam, because that can take months. So it's one of the requirements as well. Not needed for EU citizens and EU family members. And there are some exceptions for normal non-EU citizens as well, like kids below 15 or adults above 60 or 65, something like that, don't have to pass it. And then you always need to pay some fee. For non-EU citizens, adults, it's 2,500 crowns, no longer in stamps. If you still don't know, maybe your residence permit's expiring now, so the MOI no longer accepts stamps, so you have to pay by actual money. They don't accept cash though either, so either bank transfer or by card on the spot. For EU citizens and their family members, that's 200 crowns, but then it depends if it's a kid or what's the situation. But 200 and 2,500 are the most common ones. And I think that's it from the requirements, and hence also from step number 2. Step number 3 is submit your application. Obviously, but one important thing is that you have to submit the application in person. So you cannot mail it. For example, if you're used to getting your employee card or student residence permit or whatever extended, but by just mailing it to the ministry, you cannot do it with the PR. So you have to go there in person to submit the application. Second thing, which is very important here, is that the PR generally does not give you the right for a bridge visa. That means that if your current residence permit is expiring, you also have to extend it along with your permanent residence permit application. Because if you don't, very likely you will be in a big trouble, because you will no longer have a valid residence permit in the Czech Republic. So you will not have any purpose of stay. You will not really have a legal right to stay here, because the permanent residence permit does not give you the right to stay here. And then you also break the continuity of your residence permit, so there will be a gap in between your residence permits, and that can also lead to denial of the permanent residence application. So you'll basically end up deported and with no residence permit at all, no history at all, and you will be starting over. So you've just lost all the years you spent here. So definitely make sure that if your residence permit expires before you get the PR approved or picked up ideally, then you need to also extend your current residence permit. The application must be submitted to the Ministry of the Interior in most cases. In some cases, you can submit it through the embassy, but that only applies to minors. In most other cases, you have to submit it to the Ministry of the Interior that is responsible for the place where you live, which is generally where you go or where you sent all the previous applications, unless you've moved, of course. And that's it. I've linked or I put a link to the description of the video where we have an article with the most common questions about the PR, and we'll be adding more, so it will be updated regularly. So go there if you have more questions about the PR. Chances are that it's already answered somewhere in the article. And let me now see if we have any questions regarding PR here. If yes, I will answer those. If not, I will go to the members only section and I will be doing a live Q&A there. So let's see. Praktik Sinha, that's that's the only joiner now. So I will be having a private discussion with him in 2 minutes in the joiners section. Thank you for being the first one to join. My saludas, hello, zdraví, hi guys, thank you for joining. Someone was crying there. Huma Orolfo, does the ministry monitor the PR card holder if they were here or not? Are there some cases that they avoid the PR? I haven't heard about such cases, but the ministry has the ability to do that. So if you've been away for more than you're allowed to be away, so within the Schengen area 6 years, outside of the Schengen area 1 year, or 2 years within the Schengen or EU and outside of the EU if you are a family member of an EU citizen, the ministry could cancel your residence permit. There are a couple perspectives on that though, because first, they don't really track it themselves. They don't have the capacity and the manpower to do that. They already are late with approving applications. They are like, how long it takes to get something approved at the ministry. So I cannot imagine that they would also have some department tracking just like the PRs and how long people are staying away. So they don't really track it. But they could potentially find out somehow, maybe if you go get a new card, the extension or whatever. So it's better to stick to the rules. You can also take some preventive steps to make sure that the ministry does not know that you're gone. But I don't think I should be talking about these online. So feel free to come for a consultation. Ozzy, is it necessary to show all rental contracts for applying permanent residence permit? Depends on your situation. If you're an EU citizen and you didn't have or you don't have the temporary residency or the registration certificate, how it's called now, you will have to show all your lease agreements, and there will have to be no gaps. Otherwise, the ministry could not approve it. If you're a non-EU citizen, they don't want to see it because you had to provide it before. Što? Terminator T800. Što? Što je to za vopros? Što? Скажите больше. Hi, Anne, it's always nice to hear you. I have my PR already. It was hard but worth it. Thanks for sharing your insights and help. Thank you very much as well, A, and congratulations to the PR. You can share your wisdom with all the others here. Hey, how was the exam? Okay, hey, A. Yeah, okay, that's a different communication, just between these two guys. How about the health insurance is mandatory for PR card holder even if they don't have work? Yes, if you have the PR, you must be insured during the whole time. Any foreigner or actually even a Czech citizen must have health insurance during your whole stay. Then there are some options, because if you're unemployed, for example, you can get yourself registered with the labor office and then the government should pay as a PR holder. I hope. Or you can pay if you don't have any incomes, you pay usually like a lower amount. So there are ways to like not pay or pay less. But that depends on your exact situation, and you definitely always must have the public insurance. Thanks, Jan, my friends, and I looking forward to our future podcast. Oh, that's you. Okay, I haven't replied yet because it's been crazy couple days. And it will be the rest of the September will be crazy as well, because this weekend I'm going to jump out of the plane 3 times, finishing my course for parachuting. Then I'm going to Amsterdam for a strong Viking race, which is a marathon, 42 kilometers with 100 obstacles. One of the hardest races in the world. So I have a lot to do this month, but after that I'll be happy to do that podcast. Okay, guys, thank you very much for being here. And now I'm going to the joiners only section, and I will be doing another live stream there. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I did one more race this weekend, this Saturday, and I'm still like aching everywhere because the obstacle races, like you climb everywhere, and it's like my these, what is it, shoulders hurt as fuck, and the rest of the body as well. So I'm looking forward to the marathon. I'm gonna die probably. So if you don't hear or see me for a week, then I'm dead. Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining. As mentioned before, I'm going to answer Pratik's question in the private live stream in the joiners section. Feel free to join. $8 for 8 live streams a month where I will be just talking to you. So basically one-on-one consultation. Thank you guys, and see you again Thursday, Monday, Thursday, Monday until the end of the world. Good night.